Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video I have a full review for you of the brand new Era 3 premium tank, the Jaguar 1. So this is an Era 3 Western Alliance premium tank destroyer, and it is another ATGM only vehicle like the Wiesel 1A1 tow. So in today's video we're going to have a look at the price in just a second and a look at the vehicle, then we're going to head over to Excel and we're going to compare to the Wiesel 1A1 tow, which is its competitor in Era 3. It basically plays exactly like the Wiesel with a few small differences, and then we're going to have a look at my commander and equipment setup, a little bit of a look at the armor or lack of armor with this tank destroyer, and then I've got 3 gameplays for you at the end to demonstrate how this vehicle performs. So it's a little bit like a tank destroyer slash light tank hybrid, very good at scouting, extremely sneaky like the Wiesel, and yet essentially the same playstyle as that vehicle. But this is a look at the tank itself. You can see a little bit longer in terms of its side profile than the Wiesel. It's got the ATGM hot tube launcher on top with some pretty decent gun depression, but it is very sneaky. The only thing, it doesn't have as good traverse as the Wiesel, and it is a little bit larger. But yeah, we'll get stuck into the stats and have a look at a full look at this vehicle in just a second. How about the prices and when can you get the vehicle? Well, it's available from now, which is the 8th of August, until the 5th of September, and you can get it in 3 different flavours of the bundles. You've got the Jaguar 1 Ultimate, which comes with the equipment, premium time and boosters for a 30% savings apparently at 16,000 gold. You've got the loaded bundle, which comes with premium time and boosters, and of course the tank, which is 13,700 gold, and the base bundle, just the tank, 20% savings, 11,500 gold. So a pretty decent ish price for an Era 3 premium tank, especially if you like the play style. And this is the artwork that Wargaming have put up. I think that looks pretty cool, and I'm sure that will do very nicely for a thumbnail. But we're going to head on over to Excel and have a look at the stats of the Jaguar 1 Raketen Jagdpanzer 3 compared to the Wiesel 1A1 tow. If you haven't seen my reviews before, green is the best stat, red is the worst, and orange is somewhere in between. But because we're only comparing 2 vehicles, it'll just be green and red. And the stats highlighted in yellow are updated with my commander and equipment setup applied, and I've got that for the Jaguar 1 and the Wiesel 1A1 tow here for you to have a look at how the stats compare of these 2 vehicles. So we're going to start off with the Silver XP and Commander XP bonus, as they are both premium tanks in Era 3, and they both have the exact same Silver XP and Commander XP bonus, 65% Silver bonus, 10% XP bonus, and a 10% Commander XP bonus, and you can make a very nice lot of silver with this vehicle. It has crazy premium rounds, but you really don't need to fire them because the penetration on your standard ATGMs is fantastic, and you can have some pretty epic games and make some pretty epic silver. Next, we're going to go down and have a look at the raw stats. We're going to start with the hit points, and as you can see, the Jaguar 1 has 200 more hit points at 2,900, and you definitely need those extra couple hundred. It'll be better to have like 500, 600 more, because you are a easier target to hit than the Wiesel and a little bit slower, especially with your traverse, as we get on into in just a second. But yeah, you're going to have to use all of those hit points, try and be as sneaky as possible and preserve your hit points for when you're going in maybe towards the latter stages and take a shot, and you can trade very effectively with your ATGM launcher. Next, view range 590 meters, the exact same as the Wiesel. This spots very, very well. You can get up basically within proximity detection range of 50 meters before you get spotted with both of these vehicles. And yeah, you can put some very, very nasty vision out, especially on some maps with great bush lines, great ridge lines, and you can just pop up, spot tanks, and then reverse away with the great reverse speed that the Jaguar 1 has. In terms of steel concealment value, this is without any commander and equipment setup applied. The Jaguar 1 has a slightly worse concealment rating than the Wiesel because it is a slightly longer and taller vehicle, but only by a little bit. 285 meters is still exceptional steel concealment, and you can get it down to, well, I've got it down to 55.75, so essentially you're only going to get spotted with the True Vision system, or when you get within proximity detection range of an enemy, which is 50 meters. Next, we have the moving concealment, and this figure I've only got the updated stats with my commander and equipment setup applied. And as you can see, with my setup, I actually got a better moving concealment with the Jaguar 1 than the Wiesel. The only problem is you're a little bit easier to detect with the True Vision system. However, it's an extremely sneaky tank destroyer, plays that crosses the line between that sort of tank destroyer, light tank hybrid kind of role. Next, we're going to have a look at the mobility of the Jaguar 1, and like the Wiesel 1A1 with the ATGM launcher on top, you only have 45 degrees to left and right in terms of your yaw limit with the ATGM, so the mobility is very key to getting your ATGM launcher around on your opponents. In terms of the actual engine power, the Jaguar 1 has a much superior engine power. You look like you are a lot heavier than the Wiesel 1A1 is, and yeah, that is translated by the poorer power to weight. Even though you've got a far superior engine power, your power to weight is almost half as good as the Wiesel 1A1 at 19.61. Still kind of decent, however you will get outstripped by even some of the main battle tanks with this kind of mobility, and you want to think about investing in the mobility equipment to boost up your power to weight, boost up your top speeds, and also your traverse speeds with the advanced powertrain and the traction system. So the Wiesel absolutely obliterates the Jaguar 1 in terms of a power to weight. How about top forward speed? Well, as you can see, 70 kilometers an hour, 10 kilometers an hour less in a straight line than the Wiesel. However, you do have a far superior reverse speed. You go 70 kilometers an hour in reverse off of ridge lines. This is very, very useful indeed. And when you remember that in the gameplay, you don't have to turn around to run away. You can just go in reverse. It can become very handy indeed. However, the major drawback to this vehicle, in my opinion, is the hull and the turret traverse being worse than the Wiesel. 44 degrees a second on the hull and 32 degrees a second on the turret, or where basically the ATGM launcher, how quickly that turns. And as you can see, much worse than the Wiesel. This means that when you are trying to get your ATGM round on target, other tanks are going to easily outstrip you for traverse speed. Things like the BMP3, any other light tank, quite a lot of the main battle tanks can actually run rings around you unless you really seriously consider investing in improving the mobility of the Jaguar 1. The Wiesel 1A1 is far superior in terms of mobility. It's a little bit sneakier in terms of its size and also its ability to get up behind people and not be targeted with the True Vision system. So definitely pay attention to that. As you can see, a lot of red hair is still pretty mobile and very, very sneaky, but when you get found out, you can get obliterated very quickly indeed. And I had a frustrating session with some great games, but also some games where I just got YOLO'd by a platoon and I can't outrun them. They can outrun you. So yeah, invest in your mobility as much as possible. Next, we're going to get on to the ATGM launcher itself. So the Wiesel 1A1 has that tow launcher, and this has a hot tube launcher. It's a Jaguar 1. It fires the two ATGMs the same as the Wiesel 1A1, so two different flavours, your standard and your premium ATGMs. In terms of the speed, it's both ATGMs are slower than the Wiesel 1A1. Standard speed is 240 meters a second with the ATGMs, and with the premium ATGMs 250 meters a second. This is far worse than the Wiesel 1A1's 329 meters a second on both its ATGMs, so you do have to give a lot more lead with your ATGMs and up close and personal if you're trying to shotgun people and joust with them like you would with the Wiesel 1A1. Yeah, it can be your demise, and if you miss an ATGM, it can be very costly, so definitely give a little extra lead with these ATGMs. However, that's where the bad news ends for the ATGMs, because as you can see, the rest of the stats are highlighted in green, meaning they are far superior than the Wiesel 1A1. So in terms of your standard ATGMs with the Jaguar 1, 900 millimeters of penetration for 1470 damage. Both of these figures far superior than the Wiesel, and yeah, if you just want to play standard ATGMs only and make more silver, 900mm of penetration is fantastic. Next, if you want to use the premium ATGMs, your pen jumps up to a colossal 1250, which absolutely outstrips the 1000mm of penetration on the premium ATGMs on the Wiesel, and that's again for that 1470 damage. And even though the Wiesel's alpha damage jumps up by 130 with its premium rounds, you've still got more alpha with the Jaguar 1, and as you're going to see in a minute, you have better DPM as well. Lastly, what to note about the Jaguar 1's ATGMs over the Wiesels, you have a far superior module damage. As you can see, the Wiesel 1A12 has 220 module damage on both of its ATGMs, which is very, very good. Causes a lot of module damage, obviously, fires, ammo racks, things like that. However, this becomes more frequent with the Jaguar 1 if you penetrate with your ATGMs, because you have a far superior module damage, so that's a big plus point for the Jaguar 1. Next, we're going to get on to the sort of aim time, accuracy, and DPM. And of course, with ATGMs, the aim time, it just always says 1 second, and the accuracy around 0.2. It really doesn't matter, I don't think, in terms of the ATGMs, because you are guiding them yourself. However, the most important thing to look at here is the DPM. You can see that the DPM on the Wiesel is 3.1 or 3.4k, whereas on the Jaguar 1, with both ATGMs, 4013 DPM. So you can outshoot the Wiesel 1A12 if you are in a joust. However, you do have to make sure you land your ATGMs, and that vehicle is much more nimble, especially in close quarters, than the Jaguar 1. However, with this DPM, you can definitely put some nasty damage out, especially when you are hidden, maybe at mid to long ranges, and playing a bit more of a snipey kind of game with your ATGMs. And when you get into a bit of a sort of fast-paced encounter later on in the battle, this DPM will help you out. 22-second reload for 1 ATGM. You carry 30 ATGMs into battle, which is 6 more than the Wiesel, and you also have far superior gun depression to work ridgelines with your ATGM launcher, double the 10 degrees on the Wiesel 1A12 at 20 degrees, and you also have 8.5 degrees more gun elevation than the Wiesel, which is handy for shooting up at your opponents. And lastly, your limit is the same as the Wiesel, 45 degrees to the left and to the right. Just bear in mind again that you do have slower ATGMs and you do have less mobility, and you're less nimble than the Wiesel, especially in mid to close up engagements. So that's it for the raw stats of the Jaguar 1. Essentially, you're sacrificing some of your mobility and a little bit of your sort of true vision concealment, if you will, with a slightly larger vehicle to get a little bit more alpha damage, much more module damage, and much higher penetration. They do play kind of the same role on the battlefield, very sneaky, very deadly, and very mobile if you improve the Jaguar 1's mobility with the mobility equipment. And yeah, essentially, if you missed out on the Wiesel and you're not sure when it's going to come back, this would fill the gap in your garage and do the same kind of role, and it is very fun indeed. I find it slightly harder to use than the Wiesel, as we'll see in the gameplay later on, but it's still very deadly and very fun to play. So that's it for the raw stats. We're now going to have a look at my commander and equipment setup, what stats has done to the raw stats of the Jaguar 1. Then I'll show you some screenshots of the armor, because there is hardly any armor on this vehicle to be expected. And then I have 3 gameplays for you at the end to demonstrate how this tank performs on the battlefield. So in terms of my equipment, I want to make the mobility as good as possible, so I run the advanced powertrain traction system, and lastly the advanced concealment, just to boost up the concealment of this vehicle and make it as sneaky as possible, so I'm only getting spotted when I'm within proximity detection of enemies, or if they manage to capture me moving with the true vision system. And in terms of my commander skills, I run 6th Sense and Born Leader as standard on every one of my commanders. Rapid loading to help the DPM out of this already better DPM on the ATGMs with the Jaguar 1. And then I run Camouflage Expertise, Silent Driving, and Muffled Shot and Green Thumb, so 4 gun handling, 4 concealment skills, if you will. I run all 4 because this is a tank destroyer, not a light tank, so you don't have the benefit of the better concealment when you're moving, which means that silent driving really helps out this vehicle and makes it exceptionally good with your moving concealment. As you can see, mine's down to 101.01 meters. And the last two skills, I've chosen to try and get my mobility up as good as possible with clutch brake-in for those closer engagements, which is a 7.5 increase to the whole rotation speed, and off-road driving, which is a 15% increase to handling on soft terrain, and a 7.5 increase to handling on moderately soft terrain. So hopefully I can get my ATGMs round and be more nimble in those close-up engagements. And what has that done to the stats of the Jaguar 1? Well, as you can see, my view range has gone to 615 meters, which is the same as what I've got with my commander on the Wiesel 101 tow. Still concealment, slightly worse than the Wiesel, but it doesn't really matter because 50 meters is the proximity detection circle, and yeah, I get to that level very quickly indeed. And when you get up close, you fire an ATGM to the side and rear, and then you can reverse off with your great mobility. So exceptional still concealment with this setup, especially that moving concealment, which is about 50 meters better than the Wiesel 101 tow with this setup, and very good on the move. Just try and hide as much of your tank behind buildings and bushes and trees as possible, because you are slightly larger than the Wiesel. In terms of the mobility, what has changed with my setup? Well, as I've used the mobility equipment, my engine power has gone up to 525 from 500. Power to weight has shot up to 20.59, but still miles behind the Wiesel 1A1 tow. Top forward and reverse speed is now 80.85 kilometers an hour. You can see that it's miles behind the Wiesel, which can get up to 92.4 with mobility equipment. However, you do have that fantastic reverse speed to get off of ridgelines and get out of trouble. Lastly, hold reverse has gone to 52.39, a little bit worse than the Wiesel, but as high as I could make it. And the ATGM, or the turret traverse, 33.38 degrees a second. This can definitely catch you out. It's a little bit better than it was base. However, if you're in engagements up close and you're trying to joust with other tanks and shotgun them, make sure your ATGM is actually aiming where you think it is, because it does feel a lot slower than something like the Wiesel. Lastly, DPM has gone to 4,704, miles better than the Wiesel 1A1 tow with my commander in that vehicle, and the reload 18.77 seconds compared to 21.33 seconds on the Wiesel. And bear in mind, you do have that better penetration, better alpha damage, and much better module damage with the Jaguar 1. So that's it for the commander and equipment setup and how that's affected the stats of the Jaguar 1. Let's have a quick look at the armour of this vehicle, and like the Wiesel 1A1 tow, has pretty much no armour on this vehicle. The thickest part is 30mm, which is the lower plate and essentially the whole of this vehicle. You have, I believe, 20mm of spaced armour over the front, which can sometimes block an angle rounds from auto cannons, but yeah, ATGM should still be able to easily just butcher through this armour. The actual sides of the vehicle, 14mm, which is absolutely pathetic. You have a 10mm superstructure on the side, and yeah, 6mm side skirts, but you are just going to be butchered by everything, especially auto cannons and ATGMs can absolutely rip you to shreds, so definitely pay attention to that on the battlefield. But that's it in terms of the armour. You just have to use your mobility and your sneakiness to get around, ambush tanks, and then yeah, use your mobility and sneakiness to get away, relocate, and then re-engage when you feel it is necessary. But you can also play that scouting role very well like the Wiesel. So that's it for the stats of the Jaguar 1. We are now going to head into the first of 3 gameplays, so I'll see you over there in just a second. So here we are in the first gameplay of today's video, and we are here in the Jaguar 1 on Severogorsk, and we have spawned in the south western spawn, and I'm going to race into the centre of the map and try and spot people with the great view range and sneakiness of this tank destroyer. People crossing the north trying to get into that brawling location in the C2, C3 location. And yeah, we're going to try and get a sneaky ATGM into the side of someone. It's a little bit awkward because I know as soon as I fire here, I will be spotted, which means that I'm either going to have to sit and fire my ATGM and guide it and hope that no one shoots me, or I'm going to have to reverse out of harm's way. And that 70 kilometers an hour reverse speed, or my 80.85 kilometers an hour reverse speed, which I now have with the boosted up mobility, can become very handy for things like that, zooming off of a ridgeline after we put a very nasty 1520 damage into someone. Kind of feels a little bit like FE 4005 from the World War II game mode, just absolutely smacking tanks left, right and centre. Now we're going to get an ATGM into the side of this Chieftain Mark 11. I use a large repaired kit and a enhanced smokescreen to further improve the concealment of this vehicle, and to use it like that to get out of harm's way. We can reverse out with the great reverse speed and then re-engage with a different target, and with 2 ATGMs in the first couple of minutes we are up to a nice 2,870 damage. The key with this vehicle is to try and get spotted as little as possible, because you are a very big target compared to something like the Wiesel, and it can be awkward with that mobility up close and personal, because the traverse speed on the ATGM and on the hull can catch you out. But we get an ATGM there into an enemy Jaguar 1, we do take a shot in return, and this is where things like the Jaguar 1 and the Wiesel come in handy, because you are able to trade so effectively. I could take 600 damage from someone, maybe even 800, 900, and smack him for 1500, and depending on the situation of the battle, that is going to be a fantastic trade more often than not. We're just shy of 6k damage in the first 3 minutes, and when you are on advantageous maps with good corridors for shooting, maybe not so Severogorsk, but things like Westfield and Alamein, larger open maps, this thing is so deadly. Yeah, we just take out that MBT 70, still on a fairly healthy slug of hit points, but yeah, not anymore with the Jaguar 1 and the Wiesel running around. This can clear up kills very quickly indeed, and we are up by 3 tanks in this battle, up to 7.2k direct damage, and we have 1 kill to our name. And now we're just going to try and get out of harm's way. We're the only one left here towards the sort of centre and north, and I'm going to make my way back towards my teammates that are situated down the 8, 9 and 0 line, and hopefully we can team up with them. I don't want to get caught out on my own, because as soon as you're starting to fight more than one target, they are faster than you, because a lot of people have boosted their mobility up even with the main battle tanks, and yeah, you don't want to get rammed, you don't want to get double teamed, because yeah, you won't last very long even with the slightly more hit points you have with the Jaguar 1. We're getting some nice vision now. As you can see, we are undetected going across, trying to keep moving as much as possible just in case people do spot you with the True Vision system. I'll reiterate, you are an easier target to spot with True Vision than something like the Wiesel. And what I'm going to do here is fire when I'm behind the building, then poke out and then aim it back in on this Leopard 2A5. That means that I'm allowed to be undetected. I remain undetected whilst I'm guiding the ATGM. And it's just a sneaky little tip there. If you're behind a building or a tree, you can sort of fire it and then lurch forward and yeah, retake control of the ATGM, guide it to your opponents, and then hopefully you won't get spotted. So we're up to 8.5k damage now, and there are still 7 tanks on the enemy team. We're up by 2 tanks, and I'm going to come up here and help out this heavy tank. I'm going to try and put one through the front of the Leopard 2A5, and I'm only firing the standard ATGMs at the moment. Poorly aimed there, kind of went into the spaced armour and composite armour on top of the hull, but we do have our smokescreen to try and protect us. Unfortunately, the Leopard 2A5 isn't happy with us trying to smack him, so he puts one into us, and at the moment he has got the upper hand, but we're going to act like we're going around the other side of the rock, then we're going to come and try and help out this Leclerc here. And I think by the time I get round, he's chasing me, he'll be taken out by our friendly main battle tank, so we're going to go forth. We have lost some tanks on the other side of the map, so it's a little bit closer, and we're going to try and find our next target. We are a one-shot to an enemy Jaguar at the moment, even if they roll slightly low, so we do have to be very careful indeed. And now hopefully I should just be able to smash this Makarov Mark III from distance and take him out in a very weird location. Unfortunately, it just hits the spaced armour at an angle, doesn't penetrate, and we are still using the standard ATGM, so our penetration won't be as good as it would have been if we were firing the premium. Doesn't really matter, we don't get spotted. You carry plenty of ATGMs for most scenarios, unless you've got like a full bot lobby and you're just absolutely farming them up. And now we're going to try and come around and help out this M1 with this enemy Jaguar 1. A little bit of a hard tank to hit at the moment if I was to try and shoot an ATGM at that Jaguar on the move, but he stops, and hopefully we can get a very nasty ATGM into the front of that vehicle. Unfortunately, he gets shoved back by our teammates. It doesn't really matter though, we have managed to do as good as we're going to do in this battle. Unfortunately for us, we aren't going to be getting any more damage in this game. I try now and fire a blind shot at that Macabre there in the distance. I don't spot him, and then we're going to try and make our way forwards, and he'll be taken out by our teammates in just a second, and that would end the first game there here on Severogorsk. We could have had a bit more damage if I aimed my shot on the Leopard 2A5, but 8.5k, very easy indeed. Still got 1,000 more hit points left, and a nice profit there without any boosters, and that's only a 3rd class badge there. So 8.5k direct damage, 373 assistance. We get our 1 kill, and that's it for the first game. So we're now going to head on into the second gameplay, and I'll see you over there in just a second. Now we are on Thiepval Ridge in the Jaguar 1 in the second gameplay of today's video, and we have spawned here in the northwest of this map, and we're going to race into position and try and spot out the hill that is situated in like the E8, E9 area. Try and get some vision for our team. Usually there are a glut of tanks that just sit around the base on this map, and a lot do go to the south to brawl out, but this hill is a very good place to spot for any light tank or a tank that can play a scout role like the Jaguar 1 or the Wiesel. You can get some great assistance. You just have to be very careful of who is helping you from behind you and any exit routes that you might want to take. But we're going to just crest this ridgeline we've got here before anyone else, partly because some people just aren't moving from the base, but also because we have boosted up our mobility, and it is now very good for getting into an advantageous position early on. As we line up to get an ATGM into that Wiesel, unfortunately we don't manage to get a ATGM on him as he pops his smoke screen, but we're going to turn our attentions here to the sort of centre of the map, where we're also getting some vision out. As you can see, we're getting a little bit of assistance, and now I'm going to go forward. Physics is going to annoy me a little bit there, but we're just going to try and pop up into one of these bushes and see if we can get an ATGM into someone in the middle. Unfortunately, we get spotted by the 477A Malo, and I do not want to get into an engagement with that vehicle. You can easily pen the drive wheel or the wheel arch with these ATGMs on the Jaguar 1. However, if the 477A was to move just slightly and I hit the space armor, yeah, you're not doing any damage, and that tank's an absolute nightmare to take out with ATGMs, and that's really the only counter to something like the Wiesel or the Jaguar 1. Unfortunately, we get ruined there by the spaced armor on the back of the 292. I pop my smoke screen, act like I'm going around, and maybe I should circle this hill, spot what's on the hill for our teammates that are now pushing down in the south of the map, and yeah, hopefully I can get some ATGMs into someone pretty soon. But I'm just biding my time, trying not to get into a situation where I'm going to be outnumbered or I'm going to take a lot of damage, because you can't bounce any damage and you are slightly longer and larger than the Wiesel. So what we're going to do here is try and spot out here, fire an ATGM on the move, making sure that we don't move our left trigger too much to keep as steady as possible, and we deal a nasty 1504 damage into the enemy Jaguar 1 there, who has crested the ridgeline. When you are cresting the ridgeline in the Jaguar 1, because you have such great gun depression with the tube launcher or the hot tube launcher or the ATGM launcher on the Jaguar 1, what you want to do is go as little as much over the ridge just to get the gun depression, because then all you're doing is exposing the hitbox of the ATGM launcher. You're not exposing any of your hull for the enemies to shoot. I'm trying to circle here to still get some vision out, but it's getting too hot for me there. We're becoming a target for that 477A, so what we're going to do is retreat. Hopefully we can come up behind someone here, and we're just biding our time. We don't want to lose any more hit points. As you can see, just by being spotted there for a couple of minutes, we do take some nasty damage, and we're down to 1925 hit points. We spot this Magak 7C, and we're just going to crest the ridgeline, keep getting him respotted because he has taken some damage, and then hopefully we can turn our attentions behind us to this 292 who is in the distance. We fire. I'm still driving on the move here, just keeping as steady as possible with the left trigger, and we guide it nicely into the side of that vehicle, dealing a nice chunk of damage. And it doesn't take too many ATGMs to rack up your damage, so don't get too impatient if you you are struggling early on in the battle to get into it, keep your vision out, keep trying to think of different flanking opportunities, sides and rears of the vehicles that you can engage, and try not to get into engagements with other light tanks or the Wiesel, because they will run rings around you and it can be very nasty indeed. What you want to do is what we're doing here, just cresting a ridge and then finding a target that is going to back up in just a second, and we can get a nice ATGM into the side or the rear of that T-72BM's turret, and then we can reload very quickly indeed. And the reload doesn't feel very long on the Jaguar 1. Very nice DPM with this ATGM launcher. It's just a lot harder to use the tank destroyer as a whole than it is with the Wiesel. So fortunately for us, that Magak 7C gets tracked, and yeah, that's his demise. We have enough alpha to obliterate him from the battle, and now we are up by 2 tanks in this battle. We've just kept some vision out, we've just kept our ATGM firing where possible, and you still rack up a very healthy damage total indeed. It's not quite as gung-ho as the Wiesel. It's harder to play it like that because you will get taken out quicker, you're not as nimble, and people will come after you, and yeah, it'll be your demise. See what I was talking about with the stats there, the ATGM launcher and the ATGM speed catch me out there. My ATGM launcher wasn't around with the poor traverse of the launcher, and the ATGM with the poor speeds there lagging behind means that I fire behind that Jaguar, but we do follow through with the ram. Fortunately, he's on low enough hit points that we can take him out, and now we can turn our attentions to defending the base, because we are just getting captured now. We still got around 2 minutes to get back, and we do have a very valiant Thumper there defending our base. He should provide enough of a distraction for me to get up to this location, down the A line, and put a shell into the heavy tank which is capturing our base. And as soon as we do that, because we have a tank in their base, it's almost a guaranteed victory unless our light tank leaves the base. So we're going to pop round, spot the 292. He stops, which is the perfect opportunity for me to get an ATGM into the side. Just shy of 1400 damage. We do take a very nasty amount of damage in return, but we traded very, very well indeed, which is what this tank is so good at, just like the Wiesel. And then we can use that great reverse speed to reverse out of harm's way, circle round, and then maybe we'll get one final ATGM into either of these 3 remaining tanks on the enemy team. Coming up here, trying to spot that heavy tank, thinking he might be coming down to help his Wiesel, but he comes back from the left. He gets taken out by our AMX-32, and now we're going to try and get an ATGM into the Wiesel. He's reversing. He has a worse reverse speed than the Jaguar 1, which means we managed to take him out. We're getting shot in the back by the BMP3, but we drop down, we get the spot and assistance for that BMP3, and we take a very nice combined damage total there on Thiepval Ridge. A nice profit with or without a premium account, only a 3rd class, again showing you just how well people are playing this vehicle. 7.9k direct damage, 3 kills, 2.9k assistance, and that is a nice game there in the Jaguar 1, and we're going to have an even better one in the next gameplay, which is the 3rd and final gameplay, so I'll see you over there in just a second. So we're now into the 3rd and final gameplay of today's video here on Alamein in the Jaguar 1. It's a standard battle again. We spawned in the northwest, and I'm going to make my way into sort of the centre of the map, see if we can spot anyone on the ridgelines in front of us, and then we can also help our tanks with a push down the A line. And there are a lot of Jaguar, as you can see. There's one to the right of me, and there are plenty of tank destroyers around now in Era 3 with the 477A, the Wiesel and the Jaguar 1. Yeah, all very, very nasty tanks for the main battle tanks to handle. So we've made our way into position here. Just going to pop round here, see if we can spot anyone, but that light tank comes round, and this will be the perfect opportunity to use our concealment, make sure that we're not within proximity detection range, pop over with this fantastic gun depression, expose as little of our tank as possible, and try and get an ATGM into someone. There is the 477A to our left, but to pen that from this angle with the ATGMs is very difficult indeed. So we're going to go with the True Vision system, pop the ATGM there over the ridge line into the enemy tank for 1419 damage without getting spotted. Fall back, and then we are going to rinse and repeat. Not going to fire on this MBT-70 because it looks like he's in a very, very bad situation and he gets taken out, so we can save our ATGM for someone else. we're not going to fire anymore at longer range. We're now going to turn our attention to these heavy tanks that are just behind us. So we swivel round and now we're going to pop over this ridgeline. 20 degrees of gun depression, much more than the Wiesel allows us to pop over there, and before he knows it, he's lost about a third of his hit points already, and we're up to 3.1k damage in the first couple of minutes. And then we're going to wait for this chieftain to fire again, and as soon as he fires, we're going to go over, as we've reloaded again with the good DPM, and we ammo rack that chieftain Mark 11 there, taking our damage total to 4.7k, and we have 1 kill to our name. So now we're going to crest this ridgeline here, which is pretty much impossible for a lot of tanks to use because of the gun depression needed, but we can sit here with our 20 degrees of gun depression and fire in the distance. Unfortunately, the thumper gets spotted, which means that he falls back and we can't loop the ATGM into him, but we're just going to reload, play as patient as possible, don't want to get too cocky with our great concealment and these ATGMs, because as soon as you start going forward, you get spotted, you can get taken out very quickly indeed, and it is much easier to take this vehicle out than it would be the Wiesel. However, it's still as nasty with the ATGMs there. You can see we deal a heck of a lot of damage with only about 3 ATGMs, which just goes to show the power. These are the best ATGMs in Era 3. It's just a shame these ones aren't on the Wiesel, then you would have created the super Era 3 tank destroyer. We've now spotted this 477A, and we have an opportunity to flank with the great concealment. You see, we're not even spotted till we get into that 50-meter zone with the proximity detection, and by that time he can't react with the poor traverse speeds on the gun and the hull with that vehicle, and we put a nice smack into the back of him, and we should be able to rinse and repeat. However, this light tank to our left spots us, which means that the main battle tanks on that ridgeline behind us should be able to get shots into us. So what I'm going to do is get unspotted, act like I'm running away, then come back up and try and get an ATGM into the side of this object 477A, and I'm going to make a massive mistake here, and that is not stopping to aim. I tried to be too cocky, going too fast, and we do it a little bit too high into some spaced armor, and it just gets absorbed because that tank is crazy OP. I'd think that things like the Wiesel and the Jaguar 1 are just a bit insane. I wouldn't say that they were completely OP. Maybe the Wiesel. This one's just very annoying to play against. If you like your main battle tanks or sort of regular tanks and you don't really like ATGMs, it's a little bit like artillery in World War II. It's just very frustrating to play against. Before you know it, you've lost a quarter to half, maybe even all of your health with an ammo rack. And yeah, there's not much you can do if you can't spot these tanks in the bushes. And then we fire again on the move. Unfortunately, I don't really aim it very well, but we track him in place and we get some very nice assistance there against that tank on that ridgeline. And then we're going to turn our attentions to this M60AX. We're up to 8.9k damage, and now we're going to fire right into his hull there, put a nice shot there into his engine jack, taking us over 10k damage. And I've seen a lot of players do some fantastic damage already in this vehicle, 14-16k plus. However, for the more experienced players, it's easier to do that kind of damage. If you're an average player, the Wiesel is probably the easier tank to play because of that superior mobility up close and personal, and because it's a little bit of a smaller target and smaller to hit with better traverse speeds. But you can still have epic games, and it is a lot of fun. And if you want the Wiesel and you missed out on it the first time, then this is a good tank to fill the gap and play a similar kind of role. I do a very cheeky thing there and put the smoke screen up so people can't auto-lock this light tank, just so I can be able to come over and take him out with an ATGM or a cheeky little ram to end this video. And that's 11.6k direct damage, 3.2k assistance in 5 minutes and 27 seconds. That is only a second class medal there with a high caliber. We finished 1779 basic XP, 3 kills, a massive profit with a premium account, still a very decent profit with no boosters. Yeah, it's basically just a slightly worse Wiesel, kind of the same flavour. You have worse mobility, but you have the best ATGMs in Era 3. So let me know what you think of this vehicle down below, whether it's good for the game or bad. I think I know what the answer is going to be. And let me know your best games in this vehicle as well. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that it has been informative and or enjoyable. And until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.